Vulnerability on the internet is something that's never gone wrong for anybody ever in the history of the internet. So there's no way that this video doesn't get 100 million likes and doesn't get a universally 100% Rotten Tomatoes score response. But that's not something that I have control over. And that's something that I have to keep in mind as I just dump all this stuff that I want to say. This is a video that I'm wanting to make for a long time, and I've never done it, and maybe I'll do this and never put it up. Maybe I'll do this and people will hate it. Maybe I'll do this, people will love it, or no one will watch it. Who knows? I can't predict the future. That is one thing I cannot do with pretty much 100% certainty. I cannot predict the future. Things that I'm certain are going to happen have turned out to never happen. Things that I'm certain won't happen, it's vice versa. So I'm not going to pretend to be Nostradamus here. Why I struggle with podcasting. I didn't always. I started podcasting when I was 15, and for 4 years I did a show called, it started as the Spider Nerd Podcast, ended up being Spider-Man's Tangled Web Show, and it ran for 146 episodes, and I don't endorse everything that my 16-year-old self said on those early episodes. Giving 16-year-old me a microphone was probably not the best idea in the world, but I'm proud of the work that we did. I'm proud of the commitment that we had to putting out a show, and generally it's something that I think of as an achievement. The show stopped not because of anything that happened behind the scenes with me or any of the people I did, or any of the people I did the podcast with. It stopped because there were shifts in my personal life that were overwhelming, and just I wasn't able to put out the kind of show that we had been putting out. So I stopped it, and it was a bit of a heartbreak to stop it. And I think that heartbreak is still here 7 years later. Several times over the last 7 years, I've attempted to restart podcasting. And I've run into obstacles because I've tried doing it solo. The biggest reason I do it solo is because my schedule and my life and the rapid changes that can be made to the status quo of my schedule and stuff like that don't really fit with at least what I would want for a structured podcast with a group of people or even just one other person. So I do the solo show a lot of times for convenience, self-convenience, but I also do it in a way because I want to control 100% of what the show is, which is probably a character flaw for me. It's a bit overbearing. I can probably admit that. When I make these podcasts, I try over and over and over, and I stop after so long, after so long on every time I've attempted to restart it. I've attempted to restart it probably 20 times. Somewhere around there. And every time, I won't say I've failed, but every time I've abandoned it. And there's reasons for that. Partially, the reason is because I can't figure out how to do a different kind of show than the one I was doing before. because all the shows that I've tried to start since the end of Spider-Man's Tangled Web show, and like in the interim in the last 7 years, um, they've been about not just Spider-Man but Marvel as a whole. Just as my interest in Marvel as a general universe and as a general company, and more characters and more storylines and all of that. It For me, focusing just on Spider-Man wasn't really something that interested me. I wanted to talk about more. I wanted to talk more about Iron Man, Daredevil, Captain America, the Avengers, Fantastic Four, all that stuff. I wanted to talk about those characters. So doing a strictly Spider-Man show was not interesting to me. The thing about it is, though, is that when you're trying to do, or at least the way I was trying to do it, a big Marvel podcast, overarching Marvel podcast, it's impossible. It's Unless I'm putting out 10 videos a day, every single day for the rest of my life, I'm never going to cover everything that I want to cover and keep up with the day-to-day Marvel news, releases, comics, TV, movies, whatever. So I've struggled to be happy with the results, and a lot of times that's the reason I've stopped it. More personal reasons as to why I've stopped it. The reasons I've struggled with it is because Marvel is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And that's true for a lot of people. It's true for probably everyone who goes online and talks about Marvel or does something like this with a podcast, with camera and a microphone or whatever. It's very near and dear to my heart. And sometimes I just don't really want to come on camera, or not really on camera. I don't want to come online and talk about things because sometimes I just want it to be private, and sometimes I don't want to feel like I'm forced to talk about things. And am I forced to talk about things? Is there anyone holding a gun to my head and saying you have to make an episode about this? No. Those are all my own choices, whether I do something or whether I don't. I guess for me, it's just feeling this outside pressure from society that maybe is there, maybe it isn't, to put out specific kinds of content or put out content on specific topics. And for me, I always took the idea of podcasting very seriously, which is something that I do with pretty much everything in my life. Is I take things very, very seriously. If I care about something, I'm gonna put everything I have into it, and that results very quickly, I found, in burnout. And especially if I try to do too much at one time, I'll burn myself out like that. So when I've tried to do larger Marvel shows, it doesn't always work because I'm wanting to talk about this Avengers cartoon and this Spider-Man comic and this, this different, this MCU film, or, stuff like that. And I think I've said this already, I can't do everything. And that's something that I've had to learn and realize, and something that I just have to come to terms with. And I think the biggest thing recently that's kept me from doing podcasts is not wanting to turn into another talking head figure on the internet. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but when you look at, or at least when I look at stuff like this. People have their opinions, people have, and they have the right to their opinions. People, have their perspectives, their unique perspectives. And everyone has, it's a free country. We're allowed to express that in ways, that may or may not be well received by, audiences. But for me, I've feared becoming a talking head. I've feared becoming a person. How do I even put this right? I don't want to turn into freaking Tucker Carlson. Okay, like that is my thing. I don't want to turn into Tucker Carlson, but I also don't want to turn into John Oliver. I'm making those like those late night show political pundit analogies, because in a lot of ways podcasting and the stuff and the kind of stuff that those people make are very much one and the same. And the idea of turning into something like that scares me, because I don't want to. I guess I'm just scared of having a reputation. I'm scared of becoming the kind of person who will. I guess I'm just scared of becoming a talking head. I don't like the idea of when people see me, they think of, oh, he hates everything, or that people see me and they say, oh, he loves everything. I will say that I don't want people seeing me as someone who hates everything. Like, that is 100% what I don't want. Someone who loves everything, that's something I could probably live with, but the thing about it is, I can't be, if I'm going to do this, I need to be honest. And sometimes, a lot of times, I want to just sit down, watch a Marvel movie, and not care about things that I necessarily don't like, or that, just don't, that are things that are wrong with the movie. I use the word wrong in quotes, because there's really nothing, like, unless, there are things that are wrong. Racism, sexism, bigotry, stuff like that. That stuff is wrong. All right, that's not stuff we should put, that's not stuff we should promote. But, you don't, that's not really as much of a problem when you're covering something like Marvel as it is, as much as it is a problem when you're Jon Stewart, who has to deal with the inner workings of the race relations of America. So what was I even talking about? So for me, and this goes back to it being so close to my chest and being something near and dear to me, sometimes I want to treat it like my child. I don't want to have to look at it analytically. And looking at it analytically, that can have its own definition from person to person. A lot of this, pretty much all of this, is subjective. And that's something that I struggle to remember. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle to remember. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you're not wrong for loving Dan Slott's Spider-Man, but I'm not right for loving Nick Spencer's Spider-Man. I'm implying that I that I don't like one of the two, and I'm not even trying to imply that. I like Dan Slott's Spider-Man, and I like Nick Spencer's Spider-Man. But when it comes to the internet, you're expected to take a stance on things, and you're expected to come out for or against things. And I think it's hard sometimes to maintain integrity and maintain authenticity with what I feel with what I feel actually about an issue of a comic or a episode of TV or a TV series or a movie or something like that. When I feel like there's some sort of societal peer pressure to take a side for or against, and maybe I don't want to. Maybe I don't want to go into all the things that are wrong with something. Maybe I just want to enjoy it. And that should be, I think, perfectly reasonable. I think that looking at things like Marvel Comics, Marvel TV, Marvel Animation, Marvel films, and looking at them just from the perspective of, I enjoyed watching this, or I enjoyed reading it. That is a complete response. That is a full, and that's a full response. But it doesn't make for a very good podcast. You just say, "Oh, I like this," and then done. So when I go deeper and try to do what other podcasters do, or maybe are expected to do, I can just run into trouble because I just want to treat it like my child, and I just want to love everything about it. But podcasting isn't that simple, or at least the way we've done it isn't that simple. And I could try doing it, treating it like my child and treating it like everything's 10 out of 10, everything's great. But I have a feeling that podcast would not do well. And I think there's a reason that it wouldn't do well, is because it'd be pretty flat. So I'm really just brain dumping at this point. I'm speaking out loud for myself just to process my thoughts in real time and process them out loud instead of just up here. Because they are mostly up here, and I haven't really spoken about this. But I guess it's why I've struggled with podcasting is I don't want to become a talking head. I can't do it. I don't want to be a talking head. You have no idea how much I don't want that. But on the same side, I do want people to watch and listen to my content. So you take the good with the bad. Everything, there's a good and a bad to everything. I think finding that middle ground is something that I struggle with a lot. I'm a very black and white thinker. Very black and white thinker. Something's either good or bad. So the middle ground is something that I struggle with. But if I'm going to continue podcasting, if I'm going to continue content creating, something that I'm just going to have to learn. And, I have, my reservations about it. I have reservations about how it maybe needs to be done. I have reservations about how I want to do it. I was going to end this video with maybe plans or ideas of how to do a podcast in the future, how to move forward. I think just the most honest, I think the best content that I can create is the content that is most honest for me. And I think maybe I should take some advice from Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and not use my head and instead use my heart. And let that be the guiding force. Maybe I give a little bit more control over to my heart than my head. Obviously, we don't want to be completely controlled by the heart and ignore what the head says, because, they need to work. They need to work together. They need to work in conjunction with each other, and so that's going to also be a balance that I will struggle with. I really hope this video has made sense. I really, really hope it has, because I'm talking about a million different things, but the truth is that I've struggled with podcasting because just Marvel is my child. There's so much about it that I want to talk about. There's more that I want to talk about than I can physically talk about, unless I do a very, very unreasonable schedule. Or unless I develop a very, very, very long-term style of patience, which I'm pretty sure is never going to happen. I'm 27 and I'm more patient than I was. I'll admit that. But I don't think the patience required for a long-term, not being able to talk about something for however long when I really want to talk about it, but there's 10 other things that I want to talk about. That's not going to happen. So I'm going to have to learn, I'm going to have to really learn to pick and choose what I talk about, and just learn to really talk about what interests me, and talk about things that I hope will resonate with the community. I do plan, I would like to eventually, start reviewing MCU content as it comes out. Deadpool and Wolverine just started streaming on Disney Plus. I went and saw it twice in the theater, and I've seen it. I purchased it on, premium video on demand, like Apple TV, Google TV, that kind of thing. I bought it on iTunes. If it's even called iTunes anymore. So I watched it once that way, and I've watched it once on Disney Plus streaming. So I can do that. I could make a Deadpool and Wolverine review. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. There are a lot of Marvel projects coming out next year. Marvel Animation, Marvel Television, Marvel Studios. A lot of it's looking really good. If I'm doing this next year, you bet your life I'm going to talk about Daredevil Born Again. And there's also comics. There are also comics that I want to talk about, and not just from the present. Actually, mostly not from the present. Mostly from the past. And I'm starting to really think, like, holy crap. It's been almost 12 years since I started reading comics monthly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this stuff, the stuff that was current and, present in the moment when I was doing my original Spider-Man show, that stuff is 10 years old now, or 15 years old now. And that's a quarter life crisis for you. But yeah. How am I going to do this podcast? How am I going to make content? How am I going to make this work? I think the only answer to that is do it honestly, do what I want to do, and just hope that it resonates with people. And if it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think most of all, it needs to resonate with me. And if it resonates with me, then I've achieved the minimum. And if it resonates with other people, I've achieved more than that. But achieving the minimum, at least in this case, isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it could be. I think in a way it could be self-fulfillment, could be a good thing. But I do obviously, I want people to watch and listen because, that's kind of nice when I see those numbers. But that's the other thing. I get obsessed with the numbers. I get obsessed with the view count numbers. And there are videos that I've put out that have done extremely well that I never in a million years thought would do well. But there are other videos that I've really wanted to do well that, in my opinion at least, crashed. And so, again, that's not something I can control. So it's going to be something I struggle with. I think I'm going to turn this off now because I've talked long enough. But I think I'm going to try to put some content out in the next, in the foreseeable future. I'm not going to say I'm going to put content out today or tomorrow. I can't tell you if I'm going to be putting content out on a scheduled basis or if it's going to come out randomly. Can't tell you any of that. It's, between working and other responsibilities that I have, there are things that stand in the way of me talking into a microphone or looking into a camera and talking about superheroes. But it is something that's very Marvel is something that's very near and dear to my heart, so it's something that I'm always passionate about. So the passion for the material will always be there. I've explained the roadblocks plenty of times already in terms of podcasting, and they're just things that I'll have to overcome, and we'll see where that takes us. But I appreciate if you've watched this very, very long, just brain dump. I'm at 28 minutes right now. It says on the timer. I intended for this video to be like 10 minutes. So yeah, maybe I need to just shut up now. But thanks for watching. Thanks for letting me get some stuff off my chest.